This is AV Week, Episode 6, recorded September 9th, 2011. How may I service you?
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week.
It's time for AV Week, your weekly roundup of AV news and commentary. I'm your host, Tim Albright. With us this week, we have Dawn Meade. She's known as AV Dawn. She's a blogger, consultant, and is also part of the Rave Pub's blog squad. Let's see if I can't start this day out right. How are you doing, Dawn?
Very good. How are you?
I am doing well. Also with us is George Tucker. He's also a blogger, but he's also the engineering coordinator for World Stage. Hello, George. George?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I don't either.
A little intro music for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, folks.
That probably was Matt Scott, if I had to guess.
It was.
Or his
Yeah, Matt
hair.
Scott just turned down a demo. And got a bad look from the rep.
Real quickly, Matt is at CEDIA, which is in Indianapolis this year. He's going to give us a quick little rundown, and then hopefully go take care of that demo, so he doesn't get another bad look from the rep.
Oh goodness. Yeah, it's been a great show, guys. Sorry you're all missing it. It's back in Indy this year and going well. The couple of really cool things that we've seen this year so far is obviously the Elite screens are back and are looking pretty good. Not the same as their old stuff, but all still real nice. I'd have to say the show is a little bit smaller than it was last year. I don't know if there's any stats on that. And the vibe seems to be a little bit more mellow than it has been in years past. But all things considering, it's looking real good.
Do you think that's because of the economy, Matt, or just people who haven't shown up, or you haven't seen as many people?
The main thing that I've kind of gathered from it, and in talking to some of the reps and some of the suppliers and some of the other AV people around, is that what we're kind of noticing is some of it's economy, some of it's just people not traveling as much, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of it is coming down to what we're kind of attributing to getting rid of a lot of the chaff, a lot of the, just frilly people that were coming, bringing their entire crew, for 3 days to an event. They're bringing just themselves, just the decision makers. And we're kind of, getting rid of, I don't want to get rid of, but, we're not seeing as many of the just basic guys who would show up one year for kicks and giggles because they decided they were going to get into residential AV. So that's kind of been the general consensus is we're kind of down to a more consistent and standard group of, people who are just more serious about this industry and what we're doing.
Okay. What's one or two things that you've seen that's kind of knocked your socks off?
One of the the coolest thing I've seen so far actually comes from Lutron, and it is their new cellular shades that are battery operated and completely wireless. Not only are they battery operated and completely wireless, they're coming in at $299 and $499, which is for a motorized shade that integrates with their complete raw kit, homeworks kit, etc. is absolutely ridiculous. It is kind of a complete game changer as far as definitely shades, but really automation, because the shades have always been that thing that are super cool and super insanely hard to sell because they're so bloody expensive.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things. The other super cool thing I saw, which kind of touches back on the debate last week between AMX and Crestron, was the Clear Control stuff. The whole home automation piece from them had a big booth demo this morning on it, and it looks ridiculously safe. It's all cloud-based. It's really that whole progression that we keep expecting to see to cloud-based to more, almost, I don't want to say open source, but that open source feel of, just boom, 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 change three things, upload it, and you're good. And
Wow.
everything changes, opposed to, the AMX or Crestron styles of, let's program for 14 hours because the customer decided the button was too big or too small, depending on the size of your fingers.
Yes.
Those have been the two super, super cool things. Crestron does have a bunch of really cool new stuff coming out. Their new little touch panel, the little 3-inch, is gorgeous. It's been a good show. Nothing's been, or there isn't a huge amount of absolutely breaking barrier technology stuff that's come that at least I've seen yet. But there seems to be a lot of really good, products that are coming out and building and getting better, which is like what we all love to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to take any more time. You'll be with us next week for our CEDIA wrap up. So go enjoy your show and your demo.
All right, gentlemen. I'll go try and calm this rep down.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Bye, Matt.
All right, guys. See you. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
All right. That is Matt Scott, or Matt Scott's here from Omega Audio Video out of London, Ontario. Moving on. Savant, this comes from our friends over at Gary K, who I swear is going to start charging me for these stories. Savant debuts Apple, that, and I keep having you two on. Savant debuts Apple-based telephony control system. Savant is, according to the guys at Rave, they're taking aim at Crestron and AMX with this new phone system. It runs on, it's an Apple-based control system. Here's a question let's start with you, Dawn. Is Savant going after Crestron and AMX, or are they just saying, you know what, we have a partnership with Apple, we have this really cool phone, let's just start putting it in places and, move from Resi into partnerships that we already have in place?
It's an interesting question. I think they're never really going to overtake Crestron or AMX unless something major happens in the next few years. I mean, those two really have the market cornered. Every year, every few months, we have smaller companies or companies coming from other areas that have similar control products. I was working with a group, at Infocom this year that has a similar product. And there are, a handful of alternative control system products out there. I don't think they're a serious threat at this point to Crestron or AMX in any way. I'm sure they probably make a great product. I'm sure there are people that will put them in and use them. But, it's one of those also-rans. I don't mean to disparage them or their product because I'm not super familiar. But I think it'll take a lot of gaining ground before they become a serious threat to the big boys, so to speak. There'd have to be almost a sea change in how AV companies do their control systems before Savant or Control 4 is it, or Pivot or any of those guys, before any of them come up with a serious market share compared to Crestron and AMX.
For the commercial areas. George, is this something that you see as a threat to Crestron or our friends over at AMX?
Not necessarily. I'm actually kind of mystified by the product, to tell you the truth. It looks more commercial, but their strength is in residential. Mm-hmm. It requires a PBX install, which I guess is not a big deal in a house, or for a house of the size they're looking at. But, I don't know. It seems to me like maybe one of these in the house, but I wouldn't want more than one for they tout it as an intercom as well. And I wouldn't see myself using more than one of these. What I would love to see is them to have a product that's like that incorporates, say, I don't know, the iPhone.
Yeah.
Because iPhone does have the FaceTime. Why would I, people are doing this. And the people in that market for the Savant stuff, they're probably going to use something connected to their FaceTime app rather than have this dedicated commercial-looking phone.
So it's almost like a tethered iPad.
Yeah. They put out something a couple of years ago. They showed as a mock-up or as a module, the iTouch, that they use as a remote inside this big shell. If you're going to do that, then do it, something similar where that becomes your sort of at-home intercom. It doesn't make sense to me in anything other than a commercial environment. And even in that, what are they going to use it for? And it sort of still has that gee whiz video phone factor of the Disney, what's the big Disney place?
Disney World?
Where they had all the video phones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the World of Tomorrow.
We're still looking for that. And yeah, we have it with Skype and stuff, but do I really want that in my house in a phone like that? And again, I question Savant's really commercial value on that level.
But is it to that matter? Yeah, you can get Skype on it. You can get Skype on your computer and your laptop. You know what? You can get Skype on your iPad or another tablet, and sit on your couch or sit in your chair and do it wirelessly. So why would you do it with a tethered phone? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, knowing what the company is and what their main market is, everybody wants a piece of commercial because that's a growing thing. But I don't know. It just seems like hey, we can do this. Okay, let's see if anyone buys it, kind of thing.
not hey, somebody wants this. Let's make it.
Yeah, like they say, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. Speaking of our friends at AMX, and well, at least I personally beat up on them a little bit last week, so we'll take a swing at them again. They have released a digital television distribution system. It's DTV over Twisted Pair. That's also you can do control over the same Twisted Pair. Basically, it's kind of geared towards commercial. I can see where it can be used in the resi industry as well, but more for bars and distributed digital TV signals. Is this something where they're trying to eliminate almost all copper? In other words, instead of running coax cable, whether it's RG 11 or RG 6 all over the place, you're just running category cable from your receiver on all the way through the house. Is this a good idea, George, or should we stay with a more stable copper solution?
Well, what I find interesting about this product is one that it really starts to tout the off-air HD.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting sort of, hey, we can do the rest, and there's supposed to be an entire ecosystem that goes with this at some point. I did a quick search for it, but I didn't see the complete line shown to me as an ecosystem, but it's intended to have that. The real big part for me is the off-air. That's cool and interesting. I'm not clear as how many people actually use off-air, was it ATCSC or whatever it is in the other one, on a real basis. I guess in the Midwest or some of the places where cable or infrastructure for that is not really run. And
well, it's not only that, it's also the saturation of cable and satellite in some markets is not there. Most in New York where you are and in the West Coast, cable and satellite saturation tops 50% almost in every market. And you talk about the Midwest, the flyover country, saturation for those are well below 50%, surprisingly so.
Yeah, which would make it an interesting product, and combined with the ecosystem that they intend, it sounds like it would be a viable way of doing things. Now, in major metropolitan areas, are you going to replace coax anytime soon? No, it's everywhere. I mean, especially in New York City, you can see it hanging off the side of buildings being routed from one place to the other. So I think it's a great little product, but everybody's been putting out something like this, and you get into trouble with with trying to replace coax because you're going to have to use it at some point in the chain or completely rewire. And they keep saying, it's already there. The Twisted Pair Ethernet is there, but is it really for that usage? And that's my big question.
Well, yeah, and Don, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Is this something you see? Maybe not taking over coax right now, ripping everything out like we've been talking about, but as systems get upgraded and as maybe renovations happen, you rip out the coax and then put in category cable. Then this system makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Just over the past few years in the commercial install world, I've seen more and more products coming to market and more specs requesting, Twisted Pair as opposed to coax for the install. And I think as new buildings are being built and as old buildings are being completely renoed, we're going to see more and more of that going to Twisted Pair or even fiber, which still is, kind of the big money out there thing, But as things are getting upgraded building-wise, we're going to see a lot more of these and a lot less coax. Like they say, it's expensive, coax, with all the copper in it. You hear every day about, copper thieves stealing manhole covers and light posts and ripping out, commercial building panels to get at the cable to steal it and sell it as scrap. I mean, it's almost logical in that sense, even to avoid using the copper, make yourself a little more vandal proof. But I don't think people are going to just go out and tear out all their coax tomorrow and replace it all with this. But there's definitely a demand for it. It's definitely coming. A lot of people are requesting it. Here in the D.C. area, with the federal government, we tend to get a lot of things ahead of the curve of other parts of the country. The federal government always wants to try to have the newest and the greatest, and they're willing to spend for it. And I've seen a lot of specs over the past few years with twisted pair as opposed to coax for the newer buildings and the new renovations.
Well, you touched on something, and I have just a general question to either of you. I remember back in the 70s, a neighbor of mine when I was a kid, talking to my father, and he was a Bell Labs employee, and talking to my dad and explaining to him this was the infancy of fiber. You're able to send information down light. Basically, it's glass. And my dad is fascinated by this. He's a machinist, and here we are, 30 years later, 40 years later. It's still here. It's still great. It still moves. There's one big problem with fiber, though. It's expensive.
Right.
As fast as it is and as great as it is, it's still expensive, and the barrier to entry here is so incredibly high. Will we ever see fiber get cheap to where it will overtake even Category 5? I mean, there has to be, you can get a box of Cat 5, Cat 6 cable for, 1,000 feet for $150 bucks, $200, depending on whether it's plenum or not. Will it ever get to that point? And if so, then has our discussion just kind of gone out the window, and now we're talking about a fiber solution?
I honestly think if it doesn't get down price-wise and get more readily adopted, it'll only be because there'll be a replacement technology that's even better. If you look at AV technology, in some ways we're cutting edge and things change every 3 to 6 months. But in other ways, we have a really long lead time on some things. I was just writing something for Rave the other day talking about video teleconferencing. And VTC was invented at the World's Fair, first shown at the World's Fair in 1964.
Wow.
And it took a good 30 years until it started hitting boardrooms in an affordable way, and it took until the present until it's gotten wide adoption with Skype and with webcams and everything.
Yeah.
So if you look at that long of a lead time to get the technology both efficient and affordable, I don't think it's unreasonable to go from the 70s to, 10, 20 years from now getting fiber everywhere, unless, of course, it's leapfrogged by an even better technology. So I think it'll happen. I think for right now, twisted pair is where the technology is moving from coax to twisted pair, since that's the trend I've seen anyway. But, who knows? There's always a genius out there coming up with something weird in his lab. And, if it's the right thing, it'll hit like crazy. So.
And you're right. There is. I mean, there's a cost consideration when it comes to going from copper to twisted pair. But there's also a stability issue. I mean, with the exception of the federal government, who requires security, and that's something that fiber gives you. The rest of us that would just like to have stuff that works, we can live with the twisted pair. So,
right.
For how long is the question I think we're really all asking here.
Yeah.
Fiber, I think, eventually will become a de facto for certain applications that need high throughput, in which the twisted pairs will no longer be able to really handle it at the rate that we want. And that'll probably start, like you said, in commercial. But remember, a couple of years ago, they wired Manhattan with fiber, and a lot of it went unused for years. They did this thing in anticipation of having another Silicon Alley that would be bigger than it really is. Yeah. And we have bundles of fiber that were, up until recently, not being used. And they were, 10 years old.
Well, and that's that's some of the nice thing about fiber is you can just put it there and let it sit for 10 years, and once you get to the point where you need it, then you've already pulled it, and you've already dug up the trench and laid it down and put the soil back on top. So,
something I couldn't find out about this AMX coax thing though was they say twisted pair, and they mention in their publication common Ethernet runs, but most other companies, including HT Base T and all those other guys, they say twisted pair category cable, which means that they need to do something and make it shielded or something else. So I'm just curious what else they're doing on the other end to say they could just run it over. What they're letting you infer is that it's Cat 5 or Cat 6. And I'm not so sure that that's really the case.
Well, it might be something similar to Crestron's first generation, second generation DM cable, where technically that was a twisted pair, but it wasn't category.
Right.
Matter of fact, it wasn't until this year that it was that they say now that you can use category, if I'm not mistaken. That was one of the big things.
Correct, yeah.
That was one of the big things out of Infocom. So, our friend Linda, the AVWriter, and all of us butcher her name, so we'll just call her the AVWriter. So, she wrote a really cool blog post about a week or so ago about improving client service, and we'll just pass this around. It's 5 steps to happy customers, and if you'd like, we'll put a link on the original blog post. Here's 5 basic tips and tricks. To me, as an end user, these all are common sense. However, a lot of times when you're in the trenches, and we all know integrators, these common sense things sometimes get lost. One is don't wait for a status. Don't wait until they ask for a status update. Another one is over deliver without under promising. Beat the deadline. Always beat the deadline. Hold your work to a higher standard than anyone else, including the client. Never say that something is good enough, and slap some paint over it and hope nobody notices it. And then be responsive, but have boundaries too, because you have to have a weekend, and you have to have, you don't want your clients showing up at your doorstep at 3:00 in the morning because they can't unlock their door. So, George, what are your thoughts about Linda's 5 steps to happy customers?
Well, as the old saying goes, common sense, she ain't so common, right?
Yes.
Summed up, what she's really saying, Linda, is care passionately about what you do, and I concur with that. There's a fine line here she's writing with being so passionate that you share everything and that you connect with your client and/or your end clients to the point that you're the friends, but you don't want to be too much information, but the friendly interest, the ability to connect with them on a level that's beyond just, hey, here are the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, the punch list. Yeah. She said, the first thing I thought of when I read the, was it under promise, over deliver, that kind of stuff? It was the Douglas Adams quote, which is he says he loves deadlines. He loves the whooshing sound they make when they go past him.
Yeah.
And that's a common thing, but it's an important one to remember that as funny as that is, Douglas Adams could say it, we can't.
That's true.
Right.
And our clients aren't going to be amused by that either. When you get caught in the fray, you need to sometimes, keep these, 5 steps, these little sort of self-help points to say, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. You have to believe in yourself and believe that that's right. Who was it today that I believe did this? Was it Gina Sensorivo? Is that her name? I can't remember how to say her last name. She was on Raven that just did a blog post, It's Just Little Old Me, which was sort of a rant on, am I actually pretending here, and will someone find me out?
Yeah.
The classic, false authority syndrome. Like, yeah, they believe me. I don't believe they believe me. Oh my gosh, when are they going to find me out? And it's all just going to come tumbling down.
I think we all feel that way.
But these little 5 points are really a way of. Yeah, of course. It's these 5 points though are these, and again, I'm one of these people who I loathe self-help recommendations and these blurbs, but in actuality, this means something, and keep repeating them to yourself is really important. Believe in yourself, care passionately about it, and be the person who wants to make it best and better every time.
Yeah.
Never be satisfied with what you did.
Dawn, this is something I'll ask your opinion about this. All of us have customers. All of us do. Whether you are, the end user technically, but you're the AV guy or the IT guy at a major corporation, you're going to have end users, the people who actually use the product, or you are a manufacturer. Can't all of us use these tips and tricks?
Absolutely. I agree with this. I wish I had seen this blog the minute it came out, because I would have been preaching this all over Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, as you said, it's just common sense, these 5 points that Linda wrote here. But they're 5 points that have been lost to generations. I mean, this is how business used to be. With a few slimy exceptions here and there, this was like, the whole pride in yourself, pride in your work, willing to go above and beyond and the extra mile, and just having a good work ethic. And, over the generations, things got easier. I mean, I'm part of Gen X, and I have friends that are Gen Y, and, I know internet, God bless it. I love it, live it. But it makes things easy, and sometimes shortcuts are a lot simpler on a job site if you can just get it done or get out of there or get on with your life. But, we need to take pride in our work the way, my father's generation did. And I had older parents. He was a World War II veteran. And everything on this list were things that he lived every day. And, when he got back from Japan in World War II, he went to work at a steel mill, and that's where he worked until he retired. I mean, Pittsburgh in the 40s, that's what you did. But even if you were just running a drill press day in and day out, they followed these 5 rules. Things weren't good enough until they were good enough for him. Yeah. And it had to be done by the deadline. And he had to deliver or over-deliver and it's just common sense that I think a whole generation has lost or never were taught. And I, to be honest, I think these should be tattooed on the behind of every person in our industry so that we, follow these, because if we do, it could only raise not just yourself and your company's profile, it could raise the entire industry that we're about making our customers happy. So kudos to Linda. This is awesome.
Yeah.
See, even my dog agrees.
even the dog is in on it. So, this is from Commercial Integrator. Daniel Newman says, why you're doomed without a service business model. This service contract thing is something that has been talked about incredibly over the last couple years. I know Gary Kay started talking about it a few years ago, and several other writers and bloggers have talked about it. Daniel goes into a couple different, actually spells out, 2 or 3 different types of service contract. One's a warranty, one's a prepaid service, one's on-site managed services and stuff like that. Dawn, we'll start with you on this. First of all, are you dead without a service contract mechanism, a type of business model that includes service contracting? And if you are, how do you start getting into that type of business? How do you convince your client that they need you?
In some regards, I think we really are doomed without a service business model because, we're starting to see already in our industry the commoditization of our products, the way the PC market had to deal with, a few years back. You can buy projectors now at Staples and Office Depot and online, and they're, cheaper than we can buy them at cost. Yeah. So if we can't make our money on the product, we have to make it somewhere. And it's difficult to shift to that service-minded attitude in billing and in doing quotes and things. But we have to start to realize, and this goes back to what we said about Gina's blog, we have an expertise that Staples and Best Buy don't have regarding our technology. We have to learn how to respect our own expertise and then charge our clients appropriately for it. And whether that's in service contracts, whether that's in charging for our consulting that we would otherwise give for free and make our money on the selling of the products. There's a lot of areas that are service and intelligence based that the AV industry usually lets go for free or doesn't even think about. And we need to start thinking about that because, one of the first things they teach us in business school, we're in a post-industrial society. We don't really make products. We are a service economy. And we have to realize that and start billing appropriately. Some of our customers actually, I did a bid a couple years ago for a university that was for a product. And the manufacturer of the product actually bid against some of their end users and ended giving the university the product for free. Wow. They made not 1 cent on the product. Where they made their money and where they actually had the benefit was in the service. They did service, they charged for the install, and they, obviously got some marketing out of it. But, we need to think that we have to be able to afford to run our businesses that we could almost give away our product at cost and still make money. And using the service model, that's how we do it.
That is incredible. George, we are in a service economy. We don't make things anymore. That's almost there are a few manufacturers left in the U.S. So how does an integrator, how does a someone who is dealing with the end user, how do they change their business model to make it a service company?
Well, first of all, let me say, when I first read this, and I knew we were going to talk about it, to quote Molly Bloom from James Joyce's Ulysses, yes and yes and yes again, because this is something that you need to do. It is not just a service economy. We are a service industry. Flat out, we are. A lot of guys want to just see it for the nuts, the bolts, the gear, and maybe some of the bit digits that are in the programming, but we're a service industry. We provide a solution to people's needs. Sometimes that need is immediate and life safety. Sometimes that need is just, I don't want to get up to change the channel or bring the TV on. But we're a service industry, so we need to be able to, see that focus of, guys, what we provide is, hey, you want to change something or you want to add a feature? That's what we do, and we're going to provide you with the information and methodology to keep us in mind. It's incremental. Hey, called you up, your guys are purchasing a new Apple through us or a new something, we can help you do this. We can help you do that. You just bought an audio server from us. You need to back those files up. We have a server back at the shop that we will upload once a week for X amount of dollars based on the size. And if should anything ever happen, you have your backup. We've done it for you. It takes a little bit more effort on the front end to get some of that, automated tasks to say every week do this and find an access, but you start with those very small incremental things. Hey, can we make sure that your sensors are working every month, or can we, just do a network check every other month or every week for you? Little things that you can start off with that don't stress your labor resources. Even though some of this you can say, hey, I've got a new guy, he's really smart, but he needs to learn about the business and learn about our clients. You're my service tech. You're dedicated, and some of your salary is related to and tied to how well you can service our clients and get them to be happy. Because when they know that there's somebody they can call going, John, call me, I can't turn the light on. You know what? It's going to be really annoying, and you may have to drive 20 miles to go out and go, well, you just flipped the switch. But that kind of stuff works. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about, forget the topic, but I told you the story about how I was getting paid $25 to change a light bulb in these condos. Yeah. I still talk with a lot of those people, and they are business contacts because I developed a relationship with them even at that young age, in that small little service that I provided. They still wanted to be able to know what I'm doing and know when I can help them with certain things. One of them actually turned into a client that my former employer that I helped get him a resolution to a dealer issue. Wow. Because we knew each other. So those contacts and that spreading out of your ability to get new business relies upon a service contract. The same thing happens here in the staging world. We also do some installations. A lot of times those installations want us to be the service contract provider because they know us, they know we know the equipment, and that a lot of times we're going to go, don't worry about it, we have a replacement, we're going to fix this, and you'll be fine, you're never going to interrupt.
Okay.
On the commercial side especially, that's important, seamless activity.
Yeah. Let me ask a question to either of you. So a lot of clients get it. They get that they are not the most AV savvy person in the world, let's say.
Right.
What about those companies who either for cost or for other reasons say, you know what, I'm just trying to get into this system. I don't have the money to do what you're asking. Or they see a service contract as almost like an extended warranty on a car. How do you convince them that they need you?
Well, I know in my experience, the biggest way to convince them they need a service contract is when things go wrong and they need it to work and they can't get it to work. At my former company, we had a couple of different options for service. We had, a recurring annual service contract that they could buy with, billable payments over the quarters. We did like a quarterly plan where you could just buy it for this quarter if, something big's going on. Yeah. And then we also had our, a la carte menu, so to speak, where if you just needed us to come out and do one or two service things, we could. We would never say no to that. But, of course, you're charged significantly more, and there isn't that maintenance as well. We just fix the product. And, the first couple of times something happens, on the weekend or after hours or when the CEO and all of the board members are there for the meeting and there isn't someone on call, the next day almost we get the call. How much is that service contract? Can we make that happen?
Hallelujah, sister. Hallelujah.
Exactly. And on the other hand, the ones that did have service contracts knew that if they had the board members and the CEO there, they could just call us up and we would send a tech who would just sit there, and even if he just sat and played Sudoku all day, he was there on hand. If anything happened, he could handle it.
Yeah.
And it would be seamless. And so I think, that's the biggest way to convince them is, let them know there are options available. You don't have to buy the service contract. It's less expensive when you buy it now with the system. It might be more expensive later, but you can add it later. We can still come out and fix it if we don't add one. It'll cost you more, but that's the real reality of it. That's the same in any industry.
There is a fine line here, and there is a way of being able to be political, for lack of a better word, with your clients about, hey, I'm going to make it right for you. I'm going to make you happy. But
Right.
remember, I have a bunch of guys who are all on projects. Do you want me to be able to tell you, because of the money you're spending with me, that I can get somebody back to you in 20 minutes or a day or 2 days? And there's that you have to sort of leverage that angle of, that guy will be there. I can guarantee it because you are paying me to guarantee that. I'm going to get you solved, but it may not happen for a little while because you know what? Everybody's across the coast or something because I'm not tied to anything.
Yeah.
And that's that's a commercial side, or even for the residential guys, you need that on-staff person. But again, as the article points out, service stuff can also be your backing up of data. You're making sure that certain things are ready for a party that's going to happen on those days. That tech will come by on the Friday before the Sunday party and make sure that everything's going to work for you and that your playlists are up to date or that your speakers will work just the way they're supposed to and that you'll have no problems, right? Because this is very important to a lot of people because it's not just a party sometimes with our clientele. It's business and personal. So those leveraging of ideas can really be where you sell that. And it may take a few times to convince them, but the one time it doesn't happen, you can say, hey, I'm going to come and help you, but let me just make sure before I had somebody who called me who was on the contract, I'll be right to you.
Yeah.
There's ways of doing that without being antagonizing and or rude. But
or snarky and almost putting it in their face, but you're just kind of matter of fact and saying, this is what I can do. Had you had a contract, we would already had this.
Right. On a similar topic, if I may hijack this for a minute,
Absolutely,
something that I've always tried to advocate, and Dawn, and you can tell me if I'm completely wrong on this. It's something called the phase. Yeah, there you go. Not that you're not used to that. It's something called a phase of work contract. You go in, especially with Resi, and you say, a lot of times I hear dealers, when I was working on the Resi side, say, you got to help me, you got to get this done, you got to send someone out, I'm losing my profit. Well, why are you losing your profit at the last bid? Well, that's where all the percentage of the profit is. Well, all of it? Well, yeah, all of it. I'm like, well, he's not paying you the last 10%, or 20%, that's your profit. Why isn't it built into the contract through phase of work payments? And a lot of say, well, the clients won't deal with that, but I said it's the same thing as a service contract. How do you convince them that if you're doing this and we're signing off at every phase, and yes, it requires your interaction and a little bit more of your time with me, you're going to be guaranteed that what you get is what you expected and you'll know every single way of the way. And to the dealer, to the installer, you're saying, if he really doesn't want to do something or gets really angry and starts to say, I'm not paying you, I'm losing 2%.
Yeah. Not
the 10, 20, 35% that I was counting on. And it's never really sunk into my head, why don't you do this?
Yeah, we always did. So
there you go. Hallelujah again.
Progress payments. That was built right in there.
Right, but so tell me though, that part of that was though at phase 2 we're going to sit down, say this is the payment and this is what we've completed. Here's what the next phase will consist of. We need to review with you the following stuff we're going to do, and the client says yes, and oh no, I don't want that green. I want those to be orange, and I want them to look like lollipops or whatever it is.
Right.
You guys talked about it, right? At that second beginning of the second phase or whatever phase came about.
Yeah.
And don't just talk about it. Get their signature saying, "I want orange, not green," because
exactly.
That way,
then you don't have to look at them.
Exactly. At the end, when they try to take your 10% of profit with changes and things that they said, "Oh, we discussed that," you can just pull out the paperwork and say, "Actually, according to this on this date, This is what you ordered. For a change order, I would be more than delighted to do that for you.
And it's not
Right,
about
but it's all up front.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
about sticking it to the customer or anything like that. But
No.
it sounds like it a little bit, especially as from coming from an end user standpoint. But it's about covering your butt and making sure that you maintain profitability, while at the same time making sure that they understand what they're getting. Is
Right.
that
Exactly.
And these are key lessons, what we're discussing right now. These are key lessons in project management for AV. If I can just steal this for a plug for a moment, I'm on the Infocom membership committee. Infocom has a lot of online courses and in-person courses for AV professionals in any part of the business. And just this summer, I took their project management for AV course that isn't taught by anyone in the AV industry. It's taught by someone who is a professional project manager who has worked in the AV industry, but he's also worked in other industries. And this is something he covers throughout the entire course, is do your work and due diligence at the beginning, do your phase meetings with the customer, get your signatures the whole way along the progress. That way, when you get to the end, all of this extra built in that would be profit isn't eaten away with changes and problems and issues. If you do the project management correctly at the beginning and throughout the process, you're guaranteed your profit. So
And again,
take
it's a service
Infocom classes.
industry.
yeah?
Exactly. It's a service industry, and part of that service is being upfront with the client and always interacting with the client at every stage, every phase, beyond just check, sir.
Well, yeah, and it's educating them. It really is. I mean, this is not. How do I put this? This is not buying a car. When you go through the process and say, you know what, I'm a homeowner or I'm a business person, and I want to put an AV system into my building. This is something that most people, and I would say most people, and you guys can disagree with me, have never done before, or if they have, it's been on a cursory basis. We're still, I think, it feels like we're still a young industry in the fact that we are not a household name. If you want to buy a car, you've bought a car since you were 16 years old. You know the process. It has 4 wheels, unless you're buying a motorcycle. It has 2 or 4 doors. It has an engine. You get the basic parts. When you start dealing and talking to people about an AV system in their home or in their business, you are educating these people from the ground up. Here's what a control system is. This is what it does. And this is how much it generally costs. And so you're educating them all along the way, and you're building their expectation almost. Yes, they have an idea in their head of what they'd like the whole thing to be, and whether that's Donald Trump's house or whoever's house that they have in their head, you're helping them build that expectation of to what to expect from a cost standpoint and what to expect from an end product standpoint. So you're as intricately involved and as important as the architect is, at least in my opinion. So,
Absolutely.
Well, it's all honesty. There was an ad a couple of years ago. I think it was for some fruit juice that said that's refreshing, but it showed a builder talking to the housewives, and he's saying, "So what we're going to do is we're going to tear all this out. We're going to take down the walls. We're going to cover it in plastic." And I'm going to disappear for about 2 or 3 weeks. You're not going to be able to reach me. You're not going to know what's going on. But when I come back and it's done, you're going to want to kiss me. And he pats his big belly right here. And tagline that's refreshing. But a lot of ways, that's what we're doing. Is saying, you know what? There's going to be some complications. We're going to make a hole in the wall. Yeah. But here's what's going to happen. And I think sometimes we forget that. We focus in on, there's the value. We got it. It's going to be super cool. Gear. But it's the people. It's our clients. Our clients are people too.
Yes, they are.
Exactly. And something you just said struck me. I've never, in my 15 years in the industry, sold gear. I've never sold gear. You can't sell gear. I think it was a Black & Decker executive once said, "I don't sell drills. I sell holes because my customer needs holes." And it's the same thing.
That.
Don't sell gear. Sell solutions. Mm-hmm. Sell the experience of watching the Super Bowl in surround sound at your house as though you were in a sports bar. Or sell the experience of a teleconference with your other branches in Japan and Germany and Sweden as though you were in the same room. You sell the experience, and whatever gear's in there is whatever gear's in there. You don't rip them off, but you're honest with them. But we're not in the business of selling just gear, because that's where the service model, that's where we are today. You can't sell gear.
No.
Anybody can buy gear on the internet. It's the experience of having the gear work right, integrated right, installed right, trained right
Yep.
for the customer's use. That's what we are selling, and that's where the service model really pays for us.
And that's where the value of our industry comes in. Because you're right, anybody can buy anything on the internet. Just putting it together. So
Right.
all right, this is George's favorite story of the week. This comes from Gadget Lab and the guys over at Wired. High-end audio gear is caviar for the ears. And
Caviar for the ears.
And caviar is probably a good analogy because this stuff costs more than what I make in a year. It's ridiculous. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. George, go ahead and take us through this. It's from the California Audio Show. And
All right, well,
take us through these really cool things.
Right. Well, I think the show is actually part of sort of a luxury car show as well, I think, out in California at some point. But what they have are like the creme de la creme. These are hand-built audio devices, from amps to monoblocks to my favorite, which was the Trans Orto turntable. The thing's 84 pounds, has its own motors for the swing arm. It's like it's direct gear driven. The thing is just amazing, and I'm sure it sounds beautiful. Although I have to say, looking at the pictures online and the details and the Wired folks, they were a little bit of, as I like to say, the Gizmodo-esque, in that they, were like, the rich folks, you could get that, you could starve for a year. But there is something to be said for this. Yes, you're right. None of us can afford this stuff. But the beauty of it, to know that there's somebody thinking of aesthetics, thinking of how does this device look, how does it feel to use it. And some time ago I wrote a blog post about ranting about how the frictionless surfaces and interfaces of, say, touchscreens and even the iPods and all those things just wasn't satisfying. Yes, there's a feel and a movement to it, but there's that. If you go and touch something that has a weighted knob, damn, does that feel good? Mm-hmm. And you want to play with this thing. You want to know and want to feel it because it's just so right. And it feels musical, for lack of a better phrase, but it does.
It does.
And these are also guys that are promoting the world of 2-channel. And again, I'll have to say again, hallelujah, because 2-channel doesn't get its just desserts, especially in the AV industry, at least the install side. I personally think
doesn't.
It's all about 7.1, 8.1, 9.1, whatever it is,
or mono.
And those are great things, or mono, yeah. But 2-channel is a wonderful thing, and done right. And you sitting there listening to that music. I wish I could afford a room to be just 2-channel. They say in the article, this is for people who have a room just for listening to music. I know to some people that sounds just like, the Will and Grace show of we have a rapping room. It's of that same level of, sure, But there is something to be said for being able to just get your peace. It's a yoga room. That's your meditation area. Yeah. Whether your meditation is listening to thrash metal or Brahms, being able to do that on a 2-channel and have a room that's dedicated to it and this magnificent set of equipment to do that with is just phenomenal. I really wish I could have been there and played with everything.
Yeah, my personal piece, at least from this article, is the Wilson Audio Max 3. It's a classic speaker, but it's for two reasons. First of all, it looks incredible, and secondly, it looks like a Dalek from Doctor Who. So, I'm a big Doctor Who guy. So, that was it. Dawn, did you find anything any cool to buy, Mr. AV Dawn?
Well, no, nothing. We're buying him. Well, I'm more a video girl than audio, and I get the audio people love their audio stuff, and video's the same way. They're just extremely high end things, and just the normal person things and the lower end things. But when I was reading this article and looking at these gorgeous pictures, all I could think of was somebody said, I think it was 2 years ago at Infocom, I went to a class on the future of AV, and I believe it was Mark Sexton from the Sexton Group was saying, we're in a very schizo place right now in the AV industry, because on the one hand, everybody wants high def, perfect quality, $17,000 turntables and speakers and so forth, and on the other end, we're watching crappy YouTube videos and low bit rate MP3s. and there's like no middle ground.
No,
and that
it's
was
not.
that was my first thought thinking this is that's fantastic for the people with the money and the need to have that super high end. But the rest of us are just going to keep streaming, Pandora and listening to whatever happens to come on the pipe, So it's more indicative, I think, of where we are as a nation and as an industry that there's this big disconnect between the super high end, which I agree with you, George. This stuff is gorgeous. I'm looking at these pictures like, the shiny chrome and steel and just, there's an envy factor. But I don't know that I'd need to pay that much to hear that little of a difference, with my 30-year-old ears that are starting to lose their quality,
I'll tell you.
I don't know if the coin's ever been phrased, but I every time I look at this stuff, I think I call it autophilia. It's just it's audiophilia. It's like,
yeah. Jeez.
There's going to be a restraining order against me.
Yeah.
Now that you've said that, there's 15 internet pages dedicated to it.
Yes.
Way to go.
Well, and
Rule 34.
That does bring up an interesting point, Dawn, is that, and this stuff aside, and it is really cool, I'm not going to spend $16,000 up for a pair of speakers and play an MP3 I download from iTunes on this. So, at least I wouldn't personally. I'd try to find the piece of wax that I could play for it. So, alrighty. Well, do we have anything else? Yes, sir.
Vinyl's coming back. Come on, vinyls have good sales lately.
Compared to
anything they've done previous for the last 10, 20 years.
That's okay, George. You keep thinking that. So,
the revolution, baby, the revolution.
The revolution will not be televised.
Well, the funny thing about vinyl, actually, there's my wife gets the Rachel Ray magazine. All right, I admit
yes,
it's for me.
so does mine.
But I never read it. It just happened to be open.
Okay.
I passed by. But
and it
they
fell
were doing
open.
something for Halloween already. But one of the things they said as that cool little thing for the party was put down old CDs and vinyl records as coasters. All right, these are not AOL discs, people. This is music. This is craft.
Everybody's ripped it all and have it on their hard drive anyway.
Exactly.
Nowadays, so.
CDs I could see, but records, come on, people.
Well, it depends. If it was my old Disco Duck, then yes, you can use that as a coaster.
That might be worth some money, actually.
I hope not.
I remember Disco Duck. I was on the skates going around and around. I was there.
I remember Disco Duck as well, too. So, all right. Now that we've delved into disco.
Lord help us.
Yes. Anybody got anything else, you guys? Anything from CEDIA or anything else?
I haven't seen anything really yet.
Okay.
I'm just jealous that everybody got to go and they're tweeting about their fabulous parties. And, I enjoy me a good trade show, but having never worked in the resi market, I couldn't justify going out there. So
and
I'm jealous, all of you that are there.
I am as well, because I'm in St. Louis, and it's just literally up the road. I mean, it was 4 or 5 hours I could be there, but not this year. Next year we'll do. Yeah, I know. All right, thank you both very much. Thanks, guys, for listening. Dawn Meade is AV Dawn. She's a blogger and AV consultant. Dawn, do you have anything to plug or anything where people can find you?
You can find me at avdawn.com. You can find me on Rave Publications. I write on their blog squad. I also write for their Rave newsletters now.
Very good.
And I'm on the Infocom membership committee, so take Infocom classes. Support your association; they support you.
And AVWeek is coming up, so that's in October. So
absolutely.
George Tucker is here. George is the what is your title again at World Stage?
I am officially I'm the engineering coordinator.
There we go.
For World Stage. And I am at Tucker Tuesday, which is a blog, and I also dabble at the rave clubs, as well as other stuff. I do want to make a pitch here that if anyone listens this long through the podcast, that we want your ideas. And if you have a topic or a subject or want to be on with us, give us a shout.
Yes, absolutely. You can reach us through the website AVNation TV avnation.tv. There's an email link there. You can shoot it on our way. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. Thanks for listening. Check out the website. There's some specials coming down the line, and there are links to all of these, to Dawn's and George's and Rave and everybody else's blog. So it's always all the time we have for AV Week.